Like I just me and like my friend and like my parents. That's like only a lot of people there. But what we try to describe ourselves as like we're trying to keep ourselves as an honest restaurant. Like we really want people to we wanted to people to taste our food as like in the right perception, meaning like when you see the food, it's basically how you would see if you came to like our house to like have a dinner, or if you would have gone to Laos for like a vacation or a trip. And like we really want you to see like the true replication, even though like we also we grow our own like herbs and vegetables from the garden at my parents' house. You can check it out at, like on our Instagram, or social media. But we also like really work with like local purveyors in the area that also like grow similar ingredients that we can get that also grows in Laos, or we just find ingredients that are quite similar, or we just kind of be a little bit fun with it. But again, like we don't really want to like modernize it or make it all too fancy, despite like my past training working in fine dining. I don't, because I want people to really understand who we are, and I think that like food is a gateway to sort of understanding culture, as you all have hopefully been tasting out here with all these amazing restaurants today. So the dish I'm going to discuss is called LON PADAEK. It's actually a very old world recipe, starting from like the 1700s. So it's like a recipe that's sort of forgotten in today's civilization in Laos. And so what we do at the restaurant is to sort of like, again, like provide a further understanding, education about like Lao culture. But at the same time, like we want Lao people to come in and really like question if like, seeing like if this is a Lao dish, knowing that like maybe our ancestors have had it. So it's really cool to start like going back in time and to really like bring these dishes back to life. And the reason I'm discussing about this dish is because we want to highlight an ingredient that's sort of like the foundation of our food, which is called padek. Padek is an unfiltered fish sauce. Does any of you know what fish sauce is? Okay, not that many. All right, so fish sauce, it's basically salted fish, like a sauce, and it's literally 2 ingredients, maybe 3. It's just fish, salt, and water. Most people see fish sauce as like a strained, kind of like a brown colored tea. For most people, it doesn't smell that great because it's literally like rotten, kind of preserved like fish. But in Laos, we do a little bit different, which is an unfiltered fish sauce, meaning that it's not strained. So the most fish sauce that you've seen, that it's mostly it is either like bonito or anchovies, and it's usually utilizing either the entirety of the fish itself or just parts of it. Like some recipes require like salting it with the organs, and some doesn't. If you do it with the organs, then you're gonna have some sort of like that bitterness to it, and that just depends on like a personal preference, whoever is making it, and so sort of finding that right balance to make their liking, and hopefully like when other people that use their product, that they enjoy it as well. The reason I talk about fish sauce is like I was actually like wondering why fish sauce is such an important ingredient in Laos, how we use it so very often in the food, and how it creates like this sort of like unique flavor profile that is in the food. And I learned that like actually fish sauce, it doesn't originate in Asia. It's actually originated from like the Roman Empire, where it was just a form of preservation. Obviously, because in Roman Empire there's no refrigeration or stuff like that. So it's just like any other way how we preserve, like using vinegar to make a pickle, or we're using salt to like cure. It's like kimchi in Korea, pickles in America, things like that. So at one period when like the Roman Empire sort of like diminished, all the resources have been like sort of been destroyed, and so the production of fish sauce has sort of like gone down, and then at one point just kind of like been forgotten at one period. And then something happened where like during the Silk Road trade, the idea of fish sauce sort of like translated into Asia, mostly up in China, and then kind of going through like Southeast Asia. And then I guess that idea sort of like revolved around how we preserve our fish. So in Laos, it's like a very poor country, third world. So most of the populations are either like working class, so like farmers or fishermen. And so the fishermen would catch the fish, and then the women would like sort of like break it down and like, you know, try to make it look nice to present at their like night markets or the boat markets that you've seen in like Laos and Thailand. But they will be unable to like serve it the next day because it is a very hot climate. Like they can't just like leave fish overnight and then like resell it because it's not safe. It's not safe. So instead of, and again, like these fishermen like work so hard, long hours to like catch this like daily amount of fish, that so that if they throw it away, because like they can't sell it, and it's just like all their hard work is thrown away, and then they won't have like the money to be able to like feed their families or even like feed the village. So that's when fish sauce is stored. They just like preserve the entirety of the fish. So what you start is that you clean the fish. So you want to like, they would kind of cut the cavity, like the stomach, and then they kind of remove the organs. Again, like some recipes would leave some organs, but you want to clean the blood, because the blood is like, it leaves a very off-putting taste. So you clean the blood and sort of like kind of chop it into like reasonable pieces. And you're using the entirety of the product. So you're using the bones, the heads, the flesh. So it's using all the products. And then what they do is they will salt it very heavily. And you salt it overnight, and and what happens is the salt will draw out natural moisture from the fish. And then what they do is they add a rice bran, which is basically toasted rice powder, which is raw grains of rice that you toast on a wok or a pan, dry, no oil, and then no salt or anything, just dry rice, and then you just kind of like toast it until it gets golden brown, and then like pound it in a more pestle, so it's like basically like pulverized rice. And what you do is then you take that pulverized rice and you just throw it into the fish that's with its own liquid, and it's gonna soak it up, and it gets like a paste. And once you do that, when you put it into they'll put it into like a glass container, but you never want to like fill it all the way up, because what happens is the fermentation, it creates like a lot of like carbon dioxide, lots of gas. So if you fill it, whatever you have in your glass, like if you open that thing to like release it, to burp it, that's like a term, you're gonna like, it will explode, and you're gonna have all these fish guts all over you. You're gonna smell great. People are gonna like want to hug you, but no, you want to fill it at least like halfway, so you have enough room to sort of like create some pressure off. And then after that, you just let it literally like leave it on like your counter, or like sometimes they put it on the roof of their house. And they would just let it ferment for about a year. That's a minimum. The minimum is a year. If you use fish sauce like less than a year, it's like super salty. It's like inedible. I mean, you can balance it off with like other ingredients like sugar and stuff, but then you're just diluting that flavor of the fish sauce. So the more you let it age, it actually will start to balance itself, and it will start to tame. I've actually, a couple years ago, I staged at a restaurant in San Francisco, and they make everything there. They make onion powder, garlic powder. Like, I don't know who makes onion powder, garlic powder, but they make it. They make everything. And the chef is like, "Oh, you're Lao?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Hey, I have this 5-year-old fish sauce in the basement." I was like, "You want to try it?" I was like, "Yes, I want to try it," because it's like, I never had a 5-year fish sauce, so like I went down there and I was like hesitant because it was like all bubbly and like all weird. And I was like, I don't know, I want to go back home, and so I like, you know, I don't want to eat this. So like I tasted it, and oddly it was like there was a relatively sweet note to it. Not like sweet, but like the salt was like it's almost like drinking vinegar, but it's like drinking fish sauce. But I don't want to drink fish sauce, so I just want to like incorporate it. But that was something really interesting. So. That's kind of like the history, and we use it very often in the restaurant. This right here, we actually make it ourselves, and we're using, what we use is snakehead fish. Maybe some of you have or maybe not know of snakehead fish. It's actually a prevalent fish that's from the Mekong River, and actually it's very prevalent in our native water. It's very invasive. You probably see it in some menus, and we're trying to sort of like eat all of them because they eat all of our fish, and it sort of like creates an imbalance into our ecosystem, because they're very they just eat everything. They have like sharp teeth. They're very scary looking. But anyways, so we at the restaurant, we have a fisherman who catches our fish, snakehead fish, and we actually like break it down. So we use the fillets just for service or for various dishes. But what we use the heads, the organs, and the bones, and then we do the same method. We salt it overnight. My dad and I, we salt it overnight, and we add a rice bread next day, and then every couple of days we'll like stir it around to make sure that it's sort of like mixed consistently. So this one here is about 1.5 years old. I mean, like, it smells good. Really good. I don't know if we can pass it around, but I can put like a little sample and you guys can smell it. It smells that great. Okay, cool. I'm just gonna... No, I'm not using one of my fancy spoons. Yeah, so it's as you can see, it's like chunky. It looks great. It looks nothing like fish sauce that we normally do, and it's I forgot to mention, after we let it ferment, we'll actually or salt it, we'll actually brew it. When I mean brewing, we just slowly simmer it. not like brewing like beer. I don't know, that might be interesting. But we sort of like simmer it for hours and hours, so it's cooked, and then we just pulverize it into our mortar and pestle. So that's why it's more like a paste. But because there's still fish in contact, it's almost like wine. It's still going to ferment as it's sort of like as the day goes on. So because the fish, like with fish sauce that you see in Asian supermarkets where it's like a tea, that's pretty much it. But here it's still like ferment. So every day our padek tastes different, and we always taste it to make sure that it's our liking, and then we have to adjust it to make sure that it's consistent, knowing that like when guests come into a restaurant, the dish that they get that has padek in it is still the same. So we do taste it every day to our sure. So I will pass it around. I mean, yeah, it's just, I don't know if you're gonna like it, but I thought it was interesting. All right, so I'm gonna start making the dish.